Welcome to Loaded and Rolling. I'm Thomas Watson, and today we are talking about technology. And so this is going to be a really cool conversation. We're going to be having on in a minute Jeff Lynch. He's the founder and CEO of IdleSmart. And so their company works on idle management for heavy duty fleets. And so it's one of those big things. Idling is from my trucking experience, it's one of those hidden things where you burn money. And if you don't have the right tech to help keep you efficient, it can also help save the environment if you're not idling. It'll also clog up your DEF tanks. That happened to me a lot. So there's a huge, huge opportunity here in using technology to help make sure that we can stay on the road. And so without further ado, let's welcome Jeff. And so Jeff, super excited to have you on.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you.
So you're not only the CEO of IdleSmart, you're the founder about it. Let's talk a little bit about some of the journey and a little bit about what IdleSmart is and then what you all are working on.
Sure. Yeah. I had worked in corporate America for a number of years. You don't always think that path to, starting a company, begins in corporate America. But I had a great experience. And I think one of the things you do learn is you get a lot of discipline around how to make decisions, how to size things, how to assess opportunities. And so when I left corporate America, I had come across what at the time was the original version of IdleSmart. And just to remember thinking, first and foremost, it's actually a real solution to a real problem, right? I think a lot of times you have new technologies that sort of are a new solution to a new problem. And I think if you think about fleets, you know, the number two operating expense at every fleet is fuel, and idling consumes a gallon of fuel basically every hour, and so it's just pure waste. And so we just looked at it and said, "What, big market, underpenetrated, right? Not a high degree of satisfaction amongst other technologies," and felt like, again, it was a way to help be a better solution to an existing problem. It felt like it was easy, it was straightforward, and again, it was something that every fleet in North America deals with, which is just fuel and operating costs.
And before the tech solution started coming in, there really was two options. You either burn the fuel with idling or you had an APU, which is like a mini generator that can also burn the fuel or charge for idling. Talk a little bit about what was the landscape when you first started? Because I think it's one of those things where even for like reefer trailers, you're still burning fuel and idling. So let's talk about the state of idling.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, right? The marketplace, in many ways, hasn't changed materially. I mean, APUs tend to still have a great footprint, and listen, those are really good technologies. I think between that and honestly, there's an element here of just kind of status quo, right? Just, it's kind of a cost of doing business. I'm just going to idle my truck. I've got bigger fish to fry, and so there's an element of just it. It's just one more things for fleets to worry about, and so that's also a huge barrier of how do you use technology? How do you put something in front of somebody that I always think about it? Is it time saving or time using? Because if I have to use more time to do this, that's not a good thing, right? If you're saving me time, that's a great thing. And listen, APUs again have been out for 15 or 18 years. Compelling solution. I think we just think about it as the economics for those can be hard. They're big solutions. They're very expensive. They're again really well done, but we've tried to come at it and say, how do we give you predictable savings from month one versus hoping that over the course of your refresh cycle, you can, save money. And so my wife would kill me for saying this, but, I always think about, she used to work for a really high end retailer, and we used to buy all this stuff on employee discount. I remember telling her, like, we're going broke saving money, and I feel like, an APU, while really good, is really expensive. And the question is, are you going broke saving money, idling, because it's just the cost profile is so different. But in that respect, the marketplace really hasn't changed a ton.
And one of the things, I mean, they're heavier, they're expensive. I always wondered with APUs too, and why people would want to go the tech option is when I'm trading in my truck, do I just like remove it and like put it in a new truck? Do people just leave them in? Do I just buy a new APU when I get a brand new truck specced out? There's got to be some kind of thing as well where you're trying to get that ROI.
Yeah, no, as I understand it, typically an APU, just given the thoroughness of the installation, right? It's both the unit itself. You have to put in the duct work, right? There's fairly invasive installation, and that's a good thing, right? Seamlessly built in, but it's not something you're typically taking off and bringing to your next vehicle. And so one of the things that we thought about from the beginning is, particularly kind of mid and down market, is our solution's 4 pounds, 5 pounds, and it is designed to be uninstalled if you would like and bring it to your next vehicle. You don't have to, but it's really easy to install. It's really easy to uninstall. Larger fleet might just say, "Hey, I'm spinning trucks on a regular cycle. I'm just going to sell it all down market." But if you want, you can take it with you.
And let's talk about how it works. So it looks like the solution, an automated engine control solution that integrates across major brands. Excuse me, standardizing idle reduction across fleets. How does that work? I'm assuming the box kind of connects in and it helps it more efficiently idle. Or let's dive into the details.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, simplistically, we're like a Nest thermostat for trucks. So small control box that is installed in vehicles. As soon as the driver turns the truck off, and that gets a key piece of what we do. We don't ask the driver to do anything. Drivers have plenty to do, and the more you ask them, it gets hard to get reliable results. And so, as soon as the key is turned in the off position, we automatically engage. And when I say that engages, we're monitoring the cabin temperature, we're monitoring the outside temperature, we're monitoring the batteries, and we're monitoring the engine warmth. And at any time, if it gets too hot or cold for the driver, we're going to start the truck. We're going to run it till it satisfies the temperature. It's kind of like the HVAC does in your home. And then we're going to shut it down, and we're going to continue monitoring over the 10-hour night, 10-hour rest period. Same things with batteries, right? As you know, these vehicles they're like Hampton Inns on wheels. TVs, microwaves, refrigerators, Xboxes, they have a lot of draw. And so we're going to continuously monitor the batteries to make sure that they're always in a safe condition voltage wise. And if they get too low, we're going to start the truck, charge the battery so that the driver is able to go the next morning. Or if it's been sitting on the lot over the weekend, it's ready to go Monday morning. So we think of it as we're kind of a rules engine. We're just sitting in the background looking for something to fall out of the desired state, whether it be temperature, whether it be voltage levels, and we're going to run a truck as needed. So we're going to optimize that. And so if you think about a 10-hour rest period, instead of running 10 hours, you probably might run 2 hours, maybe three, sort of depending on season. And so the real goal and the real benefit is you're saving fleets fuel. Again, an hour of idle is 0.8 to a gallon of fuel. $3 a gallon, it adds up. 2,000 hours a year. So instead of idling 2,000 hours a year, maybe you're idling 500 or 600 hours a year.
And I like the aspect where it'll also charge the battery. I had so many instances. I managed drivers. They would plug in air fryers, Xboxes, the fridge, everything along the inverter strip. That was the worst part. So for me, that's super important because they'd wake up and start their day and then their battery's dead. And I got called 45-minute, wait for somebody to boost them off. Is that one of the things? I'm assuming there's capabilities. Can I ever tell my drivers like stop plugging in so much stuff? Is the technology reaching that point where it's like, hey, I know you love this air fryer, but don't forget to unplug it?
It is, and so what we try to do, it's sort of you'd appreciate this, right? It's the what you call the $500 ham sandwich. I leave for the weekend. I have a ham sandwich I don't want to lose, so I leave my refrigerator on, and then I have a dead batteries, and I have a $500 jump start, right? Because I've my batteries have gone dead because of the refrigerator. One of the things we do is, again, even when the driver leaves for the weekends, he or she turns the key off, they leave. We're automatically looking at the batteries. If we see too many starts, and that really is defined by a fleet, so maybe it starts 6 times in a day because again, the guy left his ham sandwich in the refrigerator, we're going to send an alert to the appropriate person, and say, you've had a lot of battery starts. This is something you're going to want to go look at, right? So what we're trying to do is not just overwhelm fleets with information, but give them what we call actionable information, right? Here's an exception. Here's what we're seeing. If you've had 8 starts on your battery over the course of 2 days, you have an issue. It's worth looking at. And so we're trying to, again, be it time saving, not time using. And so, and it happens all the time. Just there's so much parasitic load in these trucks. The draw is immense. And for a driver, it's what's worse than not being able to drive, right? And so it actually helps them as well too. Just when their wheels are moving, they're making money, and that's what we're focused on.
I like the smart portal. You're the first person who's mentioned parasitic load in a non-EV standpoint. Apparently, if you want to make people really sweat, you ask them what the parasitic load is on their EVs when it's charging. Turns out that if you hear a random noise, it's a type of parasitic load, and they don't know what the noise means. It's a real fun one. That's some bar trivia. Next time you see some EV people, ask them about their parasitic load. But talk about this smart portal because like this is I like how you're approaching this. This is something that I wish I knew more when I managed drivers because I'd want to find out who's the one who keeps all that stuff. Who's the one making me have that parasitic load? And like you said, it's either a $500 sandwich or in some cases, $1,200 chicken wings because you left your air fryer plugged in.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So this for us, the smart portal again is a way to give fleets the power, one, to just set up their configuration in whatever way works for them, by terminal, by geography, by line of business. So it's meant to be something that they can customize to make sure what we're providing them is aligned to where they are. Um, the other is we're trying to give them, like you just talked about, sort of the information to focus on where can I get the most gain? Where are my problem children? Right? I always think of it as sort of 20, 60, 20. 20% of the world's always going to do what you want them to do, and you don't have to tell them. 60% is in the middle, somehow kind of on average in the middle. And then there's always 20% who are going to just make your life hard, right? And what we do is focus on how do we highlight the bottom 20% or bottom 10%. And again, we measure, for example, when the key is on. So we know when a driver hasn't turned his truck off, and we can say, listen, he's left it running from 8:15 to 9:45. It's really specific data, and we can highlight that to fleets to say, okay, I don't have to boil the ocean here and figure out of my 2,000 trucks what I can focus on. Here are the 35 trucks that make the difference in how you change behavior and how you change your performance. And so the smart portal is just designed to give fleets and fleet managers access to that. We're mindful of not making them feel like they have to be in it at all times. The reality is you want them to go in, you want them to go from summer to fall, go in, change the settings according to where they are, push a button, have it push to every truck in their fleet, and then go on to the other 900 things they have to do in their day. It's not meant to be time using. It's meant to go in, give them the flexibility to go in and address what needs to be addressed and then move on to what's next.
So let's talk about that 20-60-20. I like that. I normally think of the 80. I always thought of the power law, the 20% causing 80% of your issues. But I like the 20-60-20 because it explains a lot of times with other telematics where they say, well, yeah, dash cams, we saw this huge reduction and they got that 60% on board. So now they're up to 80%. Now you're just dealing with a 20. When you're thinking about that, what are some of the outcomes? Do you have any like testimonials, fleet outcomes where were they able to really move that needle with some of this idle stuff? Because it used to be, I had drivers complain the traditional one was, yeah, the whole thing would just shut off and they'd say, well, just trust me, the AC is running. Then the driver complains, they turn it back on, it becomes a whole big deal. But this one's like tactically actually able to start the vehicle, and it's a lot more than the traditional OEM systems.
Yeah, no, exactly. A great point. And I think, you know, if I step back, one of the things we do as a business that maybe is a little different than others, I think of it as, um, when you stay in a hotel, there's a gym there. So in theory, you can get fit, right? We're like a fitness trainer. We're here to make sure you're accountable to getting fit day in and day out. So we have an entire team that's not just dedicated to installations and sort of onboarding. We spend our time with customers through the life cycle of those vehicles, so 3 4 years. And as part of that is really managing that 20%. And we're constantly trying to help them understand, how do I migrate that 20% based on actual information. Again, not sort of debating, is the system working, is this not working, but rather actual information and actual insights that they can make changes to that change behavior and drive results. Now, the reality is your bottom 20% is never going to be your top 20%, and that's not the goal. The goal is to get them to be more average, right? If you can just move them towards the middle, you've done well. And then to your point, you have this big chunk in the middle of the 60%. If you can get 60% of your drivers a little bit better, you've made an enormous change. And so that's into the optimizing of saying, here's what we see as best practice amongst other fleets. These are fleets just like yours who have implemented these changes, and these are the results. And so we're able to apply learnings and results from one fleet to another just to help them, shift things ever so slightly, but they add up, right? It's not about making everybody the best. It's about shifting everybody a little bit because the dollars add up quickly. And so we see this over time. It's never magically the first day where you see results. It's always over time as we continue to work with fleets and we continue to partner with them to sort of, get them up the curve and help them improve over time. I do think that's a huge piece also of technology, and you've lived it. there's no technology that magically solves all of your problems. Period. End of conversation. Right. Idle smart included. Right. The reality is it's a combination of the technology and what it does, and then how you implement it and how you work with it over time. There's a change management piece to the equation of just how do you get people on board with what you're trying to do. But when you lay it out over 120, 180, days, you see meaningful change. It's just not going to happen day one. Be nice if it did, but nobody does that, and that's okay.
It's
It's
like moving a
called
cruise ship.
yeah. It is. And again, that's okay. That's just the reality of it. So that's why you orient around. We're not here to solve your problems day one. We are, but we're here to make you as efficient as possible. And that's probably going to take us 120 to 180 days, but you are going to hum along after that. So,
I have some biggest surprises. I'm going to give you one example that I learned from a large OEM. I was at PACCAR, and I'm calling it the Golden Pedal Award. So when we're looking at surprising things with maintenance and engineering, one of them was this driver was complaining that his engine was messed up. So the PACCAR has a whole team to look at it, CSI version. Turns out he never put it out of first gear. He drove a manual for tens of thousands of miles and never left first gear. He couldn't figure out how to do the gear shifting. So the golden pedal. When we're looking at idle restrictions, fleet, battery stuff, was there anything really surprising working with this fleet that they were like, man, I like the golden pedal. I had no idea what some either the capabilities or how much you can get away with before the telematics showed that, oh, this is not actually a good idea. We need to make some changes.
yeah. Yeah. Listen, drivers have a hard job, right? But the only thing I'm surprised at anymore is that I'm surprised at anything. I think over the past 15 years, I've heard it all, seen it all, and all of its good intentions. But you're like, wow, how did how did we get here, right? Like, just anyway, back to your gold pedal. I think one is the thing we focus on again. I just think if getting to what I'm surprised, I guess, with probably the most is um, how much humans, not just drivers, all humans will work actively against what you're trying to have them do, right? And part of it is because we haven't enlisted them into the problem and the solution. And I think it's just amazing again what people will do to work around systems. One of the things that's really helped us is again just having the insight into the state of the vehicle and exactly what the driver's doing. We don't know who the driver is, we don't know exactly what their behavior is, but we can see what they're doing to the truck, and then feeding that to fleets that doesn't have to have these epic moves or changes, but small, subtle tweaks. Maybe you're changing the cabin temperature a couple degrees. Maybe you're changing the battery voltage a couple voltage points, right? Or those things have enormous results. And so the surprise is this doesn't have to be, again, everybody has to be well above average to do well. You just have to make small changes, small tweaks, and it tends to have an enormous effect on results and performance. But the other is just again the human element. People do incredible things, and it's pretty interesting to listen to. So we always enjoy those swapping those stories of like, wait, what? He did what? How would he ever do that? Like, and why? Yeah,
Why
but
would you have five air fryers on a five thing power strip? What were you trying to do? Yeah.
it's funny. So one of the stories, and again, the drivers are sort of the core, but pretty common, as put a driver in a truck, seat a driver in a truck. He may not have been in the truck before, and get him on their way. And we had a driver put in a vehicle, and he was driving, and he called maybe a week after starting, and he said, my mirror just turned on." And I said, "Well, what does that mean? Like, I don't, and why are you calling us?" And he said, "Well, your number popped up." And what the mirror was we have a tablet in the bunk that gives status and temperature, and it's like an Android tablet, but he hadn't turned it on, so he thought it was a mirror. And it actually, when you look where the placement is, he thought it was a mirror. And I'm like, oh, so you've never been trained on our system. You have no idea what it is. It just was there. And it was like, okay, not your fault. We'll work you through this. But it was like, I don't know how you're, why, why are you calling us? And it's like his mirror was our tablet, and it's not his fault. So we spent some time training him, and off he went. So
It's the little things like that. And I think that's kind of a great thing to show is that a lot of times when we think of big data, we also need to think about what are the breadcrumbs. And so that's a great example where you're like, all right, well, even though I thought it was a mirror, he actually did us a favor because now are they using, if one of them is doing it, how many other ones aren't turned on? Are they all trained up to code? Is there the right processes in place? Because like you said, it's one thing to have the tech, but the change management and the execution is just as important. And that's such a great example though.
Yeah.
I had a guy wrap his ELD one time. We had old driver tech Qualcomms at US Express.
Mhm.
And so this one guy just wrapped it in foil. And we're like, why do you have it wrapped in foil? It's like, I don't want it tracking me. It's like, it's going to track you anyway. It's like, no, 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 they're watching me. It's we find him in the middle of the desert. He like abandons the truck. He showed up like a day or two later, had like a shaman quest or something. But it's little things like that where you're like, maybe next time we'll explain to the driver what this stuff is before they get to the point where they either look at it as a vanity item or look at it as Big Brother trying to watch them like Area 51.
Yeah. And again, drivers turn over what, 100% a year, right?
Yep.
I mean, and so you get it. It's a volume game, but if you spend literally 3 minutes, this is what it is. This is what it's going to do. If you have questions, right? But it's hard, and just spending the time. And again, we can apply those learnings, right? When you onboard a new driver, just tell them these two things. This is what it does. This is how it works. This is who you call if you need help. And if you can do that, you've advanced the ball 85 yards down the field.
That's all they need. Let's talk about sustainability real quick too. I have a little bit of time left. A lot of times I hear sustainability, green tech, fleets are like, oh no, I don't want to deal with all of this. But in fact, reducing your idling means you save money. So it's kind of like you're all going in the same direction. But one of the things I like is in certain locations in the country, or states like California or outside certain municipalities, there's idling restrictions. Restrictions on the amount of emissions and stuff. So is that one of those opportunities where now you have this technology, you can give some folks peace of mind because it's really loud when these things are idling. I live next to a store. I can hear them when they come a mile away. So talk
Yep.
about some of the environmental and sustainability goals because it does seem like we're all in the same, moving in the same direction, just different labels.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, over the past 15 years, that mindset has shifted. And I think, to be honest, I think many would say, gee, the push hard from the government, nobody loves that, right? We're running a business. We should be able to run it the way we want. But the reality is that it's interesting. I would say 5 years ago, the number of sustainability conversations with fleets might have been 1 in 10, and it just wasn't. It's not that it wasn't important. It just wasn't the primary driver to making a decision, and that's okay. Again, really thin net margin business. Fleets have real, significant problems to solve. That shifted over time, partially because I think some fleets have just leaned into it more, which is great. The other is, I think, end user or consumer pull through is creating a need to say, at least allow me to report on what I'm doing. And so the way I look at it, and the way we've looked at it, is say, listen, the primary reason you're going to buy Idle Smart is to save you fuel. I get it. That's a financial ROI, and it's a decision you can make. But you're getting a freebie on sustainability. Every gallon of fuel you reduce is 22 and a half pounds of CO2. It's an absolute freebie. So if you have anybody in your organization that cares about sustainability, here you go. You're talking about 50,000 pounds a vehicle a year. Why not highlight it? Highlight it because it's, to the extent it's good for your end customers, your end users, or you're being pushed because perhaps maybe you have to report on it. You don't have to make the primary decision on sustainability, but one, you're going to be asked more about it. And two, again, it's a freebie. We calculate it for you. It's there. It's an added benefit. And it's only growing, right? It's not going away. And that's okay. Again, you don't have to make a decision based on that, but why not get the free the free outcome and the freebie to make yourself look good, which is, hey, over the past year, I've reduced 150 million pounds of CO2, right? Why not?
It's like money on the table because I think it's a shipper led initiatives trickle down to trucking companies. Shippers are like, I want to measure my scope 3. Truckers are like, I have a very busy life. This is too much work. Use Idle Smart. Now you're like, hey, by the way, I'm saving myself money. And by the way, I saved a few trees. I want to run this lane instead of the dirty other company that doesn't count their stuff look at me, I've got that green seal of approval. So there's an opportunity. You can approach
Yeah.
this from the edge to get
Yeah.
some stuff.
Yeah. And so you're right. It is an opportunity, and we rarely lead with it. Again, it's just not the primary driver of any decision. It's going to be economically driven, and that's okay. But again, if you're realizing the economic benefit, which is you save fuel, you are by definition realizing the sustainability benefit because you've reduced CO2. And so we feel like it's an important piece of what we do. We calculate it automatically, even if we don't get asked for it, and we give it to fleets. And we think it's going to help and will continue to help as the world evolves.
Final thoughts here as well. You guys are kind of sitting on a gold mine, talking about the battery stuff, the charge and the reductions in voltage and stuff, being able to tweak it. Having that also in EVs, using EVs in operations, they have to answer the same problem. An EV is going to have a parasitic load, or an EV is going to have to utilize a draw to get that sweet spot for running the AC and stuff, unless it's using different, electronic compressors and whatnot. Is that kind of one of the opportunities for growth in the future? Is we're getting these mixed fleets, and you're like, look, I can do diesel. I'm also learning this. Is that one of those cool areas looking ahead?
It is. It's a great point. I'm a big fan of EV. I think there's just limitations to the battery technology, and if I think it really narrowly, we're back to APUs. There are diesel APUs, and then there are battery APUs. Battery APUs are really pretty compelling solutions. They're quiet. They don't tend to have as much maintenance. So really good solutions. One of the challenges is, though, if you don't condition the batteries the right way, right? You don't use them the right way. Over time, the experience degrades. And so pretty common to have a battery APU where it's helping reduce idle 7 hours a night, and then the batteries die and the driver wakes up and he or she is sweating, right? So again, I'm not picking on the battery APUs. It's a limitation of the batteries themselves. And so we actually work with every battery APU manufacturer in the market today. And we become a bit of a backstop. And I think to your point, longer term, you always need a bit of a backstop with batteries because there are limitations, technological limitations. And so we become that backstop that says, hey, if those degrade to a certain degree, we're going to start the truck and charge those batteries as well. Right. And so it's actually a really good pairing. It's a bit of I don't know what the right co-opetition, whatever it is. They're competitors, but there's also a way to say these two technologies together can be really compelling because you get the best of both worlds, which is a really good, quiet idling experience because they're batteries, but you're not stranding your drivers after 7 hours or, on a 34-hour, stopover, right?
Yep.
You have something that allows the driver to be comfortable. And so there's a really good pairing in that. I think just as you look forward into how EV plays out, in trucking, which I think is going to take a bit, right? There's just a lot of barriers to overcome, but there's a role there because again, we're just a rules engine. We're just monitoring. And when we hit some thresholds, we go into action. In this case, start so we can charge batteries. So definitely a place we can play.
I'm really excited to see what y'all are cooking up next, Jeff. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Really, really great information as well. If folks want to learn more about Idle Smart, get in touch, check out your stuff. What's the best way to get more information?
Yeah, I think the easiest is our website, idlesmart.com. Happy to entertain a phone call, but everything you need should be there. And would love to just, talk to you about what you're trying to do overall at your business, and there are areas where we can help you. But idlesmart.com is the best place to go.
Perfect. Really appreciate your time, Jeff. We'll have to catch up again.
All right. Hey, thanks very much. It was great.
That's going to be a wrap for this episode. If you're just joining us, we're on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, wherever you find your podcast needs. Just look up Loaded and Rolling. While you're at it, sign up for the newsletter, freightwaves.com/loaded and rolling. You can get it in your inbox every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be a wrap for this episode, but don't worry, folks. Don't touch that dial. I'll see you again next week.